Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Connections podcast, powered by Healthcare Compliance Pros. I am your host, Jeremy Winn. Our purpose for this podcast is to introduce you to key topics and experts in the healthcare industry to ensure you have what you need to successfully manage your practice. Please subscribe and follow us on our social media channels to make sure you don't miss any new episodes. If you have recommendations for guests or topics for this podcast, email me at jwin@hcp.md. With that, enjoy this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Winn, the Director of Sales here at Healthcare Compliance Pros. We've got an awesome guest today. Excited to talk with Mitch Steffens. He's the Vice President of Investment Banking at Palm Tree, and he leads the Healthcare Investment Banking Group there. So, Mitch, welcome.
Thank you for the kind words, Jeremy. Pleasure to be joining with you today.
Absolutely. So I'd love if you could give our listeners a little more thorough introduction. Let's jump into, Palm Tree a little bit, how you got to Palm Tree, what your life was like before that, what you've been doing. Love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mitchell Steffens, Vice President here. I lead our healthcare investment banking group at Palm Tree. Palm Tree is a full-service M&A advisory practice combining both investment banking with financial consulting and operational consulting services. We primarily, work with both founder-owned as well as private equity-owned businesses.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. And even go a little. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you personally. I like to get to know our guests, and our listeners love to know that as well. So I'd love to jump into some more of the personal side with you.
So I, sit in our Chicago office. We have offices across Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, and Dallas. For starters, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Michigan. So I am admittedly a Michigan State Spartan as well as a Detroit Lions fan.
Hey,
I
you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this, but here I sit in Utah. I'm a Detroit Lions fan as well. Have been my whole life. So,
we went through an 0-16 season, Jeremy. I hit rock bottom and I've came back, right?
yeah, we're on the cusp. If we can just finally break through it. My fandom started with Barry Sanders back in the '90s, and so he broke my heart when he retired early. But I stuck with the team through mostly thin years now up to this point.
You could go with Barry, you can go with Kelvin. We just have a way of doing things and ending careers early, unfortunately.
That's awesome. Sorry, I had to interject there, knowing you're a Lions fan.
No, I love it, and unfortunate that between both the Lions and the Spartans, I feel like I got left at the altar twice this year. And the transfer portal is not getting any better.
No.
My professional background is probably a little bit more unique in the fact that I've spent my entire career within healthcare M&A, across both, investment banking, doing a lot of hospital health system work, working in more of the debt leverage finance space, as well as areas of valuation. I started the first half of my career heavy with physician practices and ambulatory surgery centers, working with anything from orthopedic to physical therapy, cardio, behavioral health, home health, hospice.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say I cut my teeth in CPT code level data, for better or for worse. From there, I shifted to doing more private equity backed and large corporate M&A, where I've spent the last half of my career.
Yeah.
Again, working in those same, similar provider services ecosystem, but also doing a lot more of the outsourced services or the healthcare IT and revenue cycle management. I spend a ton of my time. Areas like pharma services and also medical devices. So
Awesome.
Kind of continued all within healthcare, but kind of more expansive across the full healthcare ecosystem.
Love that. So well versed, lots of experience over many years, and that's why I was so excited to have you on. I appreciate it. So let's jump into the topics. I'd love to get your thoughts on really the healthcare transaction landscape currently. Where we've been, where we at currently, where do you potentially see it going? And I say potentially because man, there's a lot of variables there. And then I think along with that, beyond the landscape, you work with so many private equity groups. What are these investors really looking for, when they're considering an investment in a healthcare business today?
No, great questions and great topics, Jeremy. Hopefully these are insightful for the audience here. I think the best way to answer is if we zoom out and look, call it maybe over the past 5 years of investment, both healthcare as well as maybe more broadly. We came off, record high deal, flow and kind of overall investment. If you look at the likes of kind of end of 2020 into 2021,
Yeah.
where investors took, advantage of low interest rate environments. A lot of specifically in the physician practice space, there was a lot of activity and consolidation, right? Able to acquire practices on low interest rate environment and build larger, more scaled platforms.
Yep.
Where we sit today, that activity has slowed down, in part with a higher interest rate environment, but also things such as regulatory change and some of the uncertainty in the overall macro environment. If you look at what's happening right now in healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
you could talk to supply chain tariffs. There is reimbursement pressures across, what is going to happen with Medicare and the Medicaid deficit that's
Yep.
looking to be fixed. And then in addition, you have some state level kind of transaction reporting laws that have came into the mix.
Yeah.
That's, impacting overall investment and overall with the uncertainty, whether it's states like California or Massachusetts. Indiana has a little bit more stringent reporting laws. And so when you look at the combination of those things, I think while slower than where deal levels were maybe in 2021, they're kind of stayed more constant over the past year. And we're anticipating 25 to stay around the same levels.
Okay. No, that's great. That's really helpful. I appreciate that. So, I'll reiterate maybe that second part of the question. What are the investors right now? What are they really looking for in this current landscape?
Yeah, so investors, still looking to find areas that they can make, a strong return for their LP base, right? It's a lot of the same overall thesis, but maybe digging in different pockets. For instance, finding those subspecialties or sectors that maybe have a few more tailwinds, whether it be from a reimbursement or inorganic growth perspective, than maybe some of those others where have already been a little bit consolidated and less, I'll call less opportunity. I like to use the phrase of playing where the puck's going to be, where the puck's been. So things such as whether it be behavioral health, where you're having some, uplift in reimbursement and some overall adoption. Home health, hospice, and post-acute has been active. Orthopedic, physical therapy,
Mm-hmm.
ophthalmology has been, med spa has been red hot the past couple of years and is still active. And so there's still areas, within the services side, as well as more on the outsourced services. So revenue cycle management, where we
Yeah.
spend a lot of time, that has just been red hot the past 12 months. You could look at things like the big take private of R1, Notion Health, Rev Spring, Access Healthcare went earlier this year. Just overall activity. I hear it from my private equity clients day by day of, what other revenue cycle opportunities can we play, Mitch?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I appreciate that insight. For us, the med spa space is booming. We're seeing that as well. And is it, you know, is there a shift in also trying to get away from the traditional reimbursement model, and enjoying these cash pay opportunities that are out there? I'm just curious what that kind of phenomenon that you're seeing.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there, Jeremy, of how can we disassociate ourselves from reimbursement risk as much as possible?
Yeah.
We operate in a healthcare landscape that has a lot of stroke of the pen risk, right? And there's some uncertainty with payers, with, Washington and how things go. And how can we have predictable cash flows with not, taking on that much exposure? So areas, med spa where you do have a little bit more cash base, concierge medicine, in other areas where you can do, a little bit more attractive to investors. Hence why you see the activity in revenue cycle management or pharma services or medical device outsourcing, where you're still playing those end markets the same.
Yeah.
So if you think of behavioral health rev cycle, like I'm catching the tailwinds of behavioral health, albeit not having the immediate direct exposure to reimbursement risk. Those models are attractive to investors.
Yeah. I love that. That's smart. Makes a lot of sense. So let's shift to another topic here. So, uh, if I myself am in a a physician practice that is interested in a transaction here at some point, whatever that window is, um, I meet Mitch. and you take me on as a client. Give me two, three, maybe four things that as you come on and work with me that you're gonna have me work on to prepare myself for that future potential sell or a partnership with other groups. I'd love to hear, where you really determine what are the critical things.
I think first and foremost, Jeremy, number one, speak with your advisors, whether it be myself from an investment banking lens or, other advisors we bring in. It takes a team to get a transaction across. If you bring up the Lions, right? You can't win, with just a quarterback. Like you're going to need the line, you're going to need the receivers, you're going to need a wealth advisor. Let's get the estate planners, the tax accountants, everyone in on that founder's, kind of small circle, and here at Palm Tree, help, advise of who should that circle be. And let's get everyone under one tent and think through it together.
Yeah.
Um, then it comes to the execution, right? Okay, we did the off season, we did the training camp. Now it comes to execution in the regular season. Getting the house in order with financials.
Yeah.
Are we on cash basis today, or do we have clean accrual financials? How does the operational data look? What's our census? What's our payer mix? What's our CPT code mix? How does that look? How do we look to other competitors or other industry benchmarks? Are
Yeah.
we going to be more attractive, or maybe are we going to be a little less attractive? But here's why. In revenue cycle, a big thing. What is our, customer retention? What is our gross and net retention? How well are we servicing our customers, and are they coming back? What's our sales growth? What's our bookings looking like? Is that accelerating? Where are we winning? Those are all the type of things that you need to kind of consider. And I think of HR and compliance, another very big one, and why having a partner like Healthcare Compliance Pros is so crucial is you need to be streamlined throughout. And are your processes, one, are they compliant? One or two, are they scalable? Are they repeatable? Because an investor coming in is going to look to continue to scale and grow and needs a platform that they can do so. So having a partner like you guys is, instrumental, throughout diligence and beyond.
Absolutely. Yeah, appreciate that. And we hear that a lot. Obviously we get asked a lot of compliance questions, before and during this transaction process with a lot of groups. And again, I've said this before, I think, on this podcast, but we get told that, hey, compliance may not increase the multiple, but if it's intact, it'll help get the deal done. And that's just as critical. Yeah, the multiple doesn't matter if you can't get the deal done. So that's where we've really been able to help a lot of people over the years.
I couldn't agree more. One, time kills all deals. You've probably
Yeah.
heard it, before, whether it be in, M&A or in, other areas of sales. Um, Compliance is one of those things that can take time and certainly, shut down deals. Now,
Absolutely.
that said, what you're seeing in physician practice is big right now, or in the past couple of years. There was a lot of those acquisitions made, but they really weren't well integrated.
Mm-hmm.
Compliance is an area where you can look and feel more integrated than maybe some of the other processes. And, there may be even an argument that because of that, you are going to come across as a stronger platform. And there very well may be an ROI attached to that. Not as
Absolutely.
direct as, hey, we have more adjusted EBITDA or our financials are better at the end of the day. But from that overall look and feel of a platform and some of those more qualitative metrics to an investor, do you get an extra quarter, half a turn of a multiple? Are
Right.
you looked at a stronger platform? And so I think very crucial throughout.
Yeah. Love that. That's great wisdom. I appreciate that. So, uh, me being your client, you convinced me, Mitch. So how do people get a hold of you, if they want to talk with you further and potentially engage with you in a relationship to, prepare themselves for a transaction?
They can certainly, find my comfort or my contact information, whether it's shown here through you guys. You can reach me via email at msteffens, Steffens at palmtreellc.com. Or feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Always happy to network and give my thoughts, and at the very least, chat shop or chat sports.
Absolutely. Yeah. You and I are going to catch up on the Lions after this. So now that we got that link. So appreciate it, Mitchell. So awesome to have you. Um, Really, really good. Thanks for coming in and being on the show today.
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you again for the opportunity. Really appreciate it. And, thank you to the audience for the time today. Look forward to being in touch.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. For more information on the topic we covered today, you can reach out to me or to our guest. For any additional information on healthcare compliance pros, feel free to email me at jwin@hcp.md. Don't forget to tune in next week. Thank you.